Hey there, Transformers. Happy Thursday. We are not actually coming to you live this week. This is a very special occasion, and we are pre recording this week's conversation, but for very good reason. I'm so excited for my guest today. She's going to be talking to us about the importance of leaning into our identity in the ways that we work. I have with me Adya Roy. And Adya, I'm so thankful to have you with me this week. You have introduced me to terminology that I previously wasn't familiar with. And just following you and your presence on social media, I have learned so much about what it means to be a Desi woman. You are the Desi career woman. Before we hear from Adya, I want to explain this week's session, this week's training. It's important for us to really feel like we're in alignment with our identities in the way that we work. Our identities influence our belief systems, which influence our habits. So if we want to implement these strong habits in the way that we work, in the way that we take care of ourselves, we can't be in discord with the identities that we hold. So I believe wholeheartedly in the future of work and really leaning into our identity. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So buckle up. If you have any questions for either one of us, please feel free to drop them on this video. I'll make sure that we get answers back to you. But let's dive right in. Adya, thank you for being with me this week. Can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you as an engineer to create this social media presence in educating others about the Desi lifestyle?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. And to answer your question, as an engineer, I always found myself as a non-stereotypical engineer. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the one who was always trying to break apart a car and put it back together. I did find that I had a lot of creative instincts and outputs in life. I was a freelance photographer. I loved to bartend. There's so many things about me that were like more on the artistic side. And as I grew older, one, I realized that I had very few female friends. Being that engineering is largely male, and being that a lot of times I find that females look at each other as competition. They're like, oh, nope, I don't want to help her because then she's going to take my spot. Rather than I feel like a lot of the guys that I hung out with didn't feel that competition with me. But as I started working kind of out of college and as I was transitioning into the workforce, I found that there were a lot of women in the workforce that were dying for a sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the women that I worked with, the first company I worked for, I was the only South Asian woman. And so I did feel like the Desi career woman because I was the only one in the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
But I had my women. And that's what I realized that we had never had a place for South Asian women to come together and talk about careers or talk about investing or how to do your resumes right. I had the advantage that my parents came from more of a corporate world, but a lot of South Asian families are more business based. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, a lot of people couldn't really go to their parents and be like, hey, dad, how do I write a resume? Right. So I think all of those things put together, I was like, I want to build a community. I didn't really know where to start building the community, but I started to notice a lot of engagement on Instagram and talking about the way I ended up. I think one of the first posts that pushed me towards creating this platform was I bought a BMW as my first car. And this is something that I've been working towards since I was probably like 16 or 17,
Yeah.
because at 16 or 17, I started to build my credit. And then all throughout college, I continued building credit and making sure that I had my credit score up to date. I would check it once a month. And I saved up a whole lot of money throughout my entire college experience that I would have enough money to buy a secondhand luxury vehicle at graduation. And people were amazed. People were like, how did you do that? Oh, your dad must have given it to you. Oh, you're so privileged, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, hold on. This is like 6 years in the making. I've been
Yeah.
working on this for a long time. And so that post was probably one of my highest engaging posts so far, is where I broke it down into how anybody can get a secondhand luxury vehicle on a starting salary. And
Mm.
That was my first time being open about the fact that, like, for example, working in manufacturing, I'm not making six figures. So I mentioned that. I talked about all of the steps that I had taken in order to make sure my credit was as high as possible, therefore my interest was as low as possible. All of those different steps that I had taken. And that was the first time I realized that maybe Instagram is a little bit more than just pretty pictures and
Mhm.
outfit changes or makeup tutorials. And maybe this would be a good place to start a community to talk about the real conversations that we never got to have in our community.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think it's so important to recognize where there is a gap in conversations being held. And I'd like for the viewers at home, if you would explain the significance and quite honestly, the honor that comes with the identity of a Desi woman.
Oh, me? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can explain
Like,
it. Yeah. So for me, I think being Desi is it's a whole lot of everything, right? Culture has its ups and its downs. So one of the biggest ups is that we are extremely, extremely focused on academics.
mm,
Academics is a huge part of Indian culture, and even women and men alike. As soon as you enter school, academics is a big focus, right? You're like, nope, you have to do well. We'll get you the resources necessary. So a lot of times, like for example, if there were courses that I was struggling with that my parents weren't able to help with, they would help me get a tutor. But
mhm.
for them, it was kind of the A's and B's range is acceptable. A preferably, B's not so acceptable.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that kind of focus on academics is really big. Obviously, some people thrive under pressure and some people don't, and that's one of the biggest drawbacks of our culture. But one of the things that made me realize is it was kind of counterintuitive. Topper throughout school, right? I graduated as valedictorian. I went to a great college. I was in the number 2 program in the country, and every time I met my mom's friends or anybody random, "So do you have a boyfriend?" And I was like,
Mm,
"Why is
mhm,
that the first question?" And then as I got closer to, like, 23, 24, "So when are you getting married?" And I was like,
mhm.
"When am I getting a promotion?" Like, why did we focus so much on academia and building that foundation towards a career, and then suddenly we just let go of it all? And that was the part that it being a Desi woman, I think it's a confusing space, right? Your whole life you're taught to be the best at everything. You're like,
Mhm.
nope, you have to be better than everybody else. You have to beat the competition, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, I feel like you continue running, but you realize that nobody's watching you anymore. And it's
Ah,
really up to
mm,
you whether you want to continue running or you want to stop and just do what you want to do. Right. So, like
yeah.
for me, coming out of college was the first time I didn't have a close eye on me. Otherwise, normally I was very used to people, random, aunts and uncles finding my social media and telling my parents about the things that I'm doing in college. And coming out of college, I was like, no, this is my time to I can either keep running, which I am, I would say I'm running at a steady space at work, but I can also take breaks in order to pursue a second lifestyle, which is the social media side. And
Yeah.
that's something that I finally found the freedom to do. And I was like, okay, nobody's watching me. Maybe now is my time to grow because nobody's watching me.
Mm,
But at the same
mm.
time, if nobody's watching you and you're burnt out, there's a high chance for you to fall into complacency because you don't have that support system to lift you up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an important piece. And I'm glad that you highlight that support system, because part of our well-being is support, accountability, being seen, feeling like we belong, feeling like we are safe, and feeling like we are loved. And with social media, that can be really challenging, right? Because it's not necessarily authentic love or authentic belonging that we're receiving, but by highlighting this new definition, this new identity of what it means to be South Asian, female, and working hard in pursuit of your professional goals can help someone be seen. And that's life changing for many people, is to see themselves in another person.
And
For you,
being represented, yeah.
yeah. For you individually, how do you feel like things shifted for you once you started to embrace your own definition of this identity?
I think I think for a long time, I almost felt like it was a double life. I
Mm.
was embarrassed to talk about Desi career women at work, even though I wasn't embarrassed the other way. I talked about my work
Mhm.
experiences because that's the foundation for my social media, right? So a lot of the times the toxic behavior I faced at work ended up being the content that I would use in my social media.
Yeah.
But the other way around, I was always afraid of embracing that I had this second side to me on a public platform or
Mm.
in a work setting in a very typical 9 to 5 white male setting, right?
Mhm.
And I think that really changed when I changed, and that was one of the
Mm.
things where I decided to embrace it, and I was like, "Nope, I'm going to put it on my resume. I'm going to make a stance. I'm going to talk about it at work." There was a mentorship call, and I was like, "So what do you do in your free time?" And I was like, I really don't have free time, and they're just like, "Oh, Audia, you're so busy," and I was like, "No, no, no, I genuinely I have a business that I also run, so that takes, like, a lot of my time," and kind of changing into that mindset of this is not just an Instagram, it is a full-fledged business, right? I had to
Yeah.
go through and file for everything, I had to learn how to be a businesswoman on the side, which your 9 to 5 really doesn't teach you how to do that.
Oh, it
So
does not.
no, and so that all of that stuff, I think it really got to a point where I had to change my own mindset, and I was like,
Mm.
"I need to start talking about this because what's the point of living a double life if the point
Mm.
was to create a support community? What if there's somebody in my second life that would wanna know about my first one, right?" So I
Yeah.
was like, "What if people from both sides should know about each other because that's how we're going to build a community, and if I can't embrace both sides of me, I can't expect others to."
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you've experienced a shift in how you talk to yourself, how you care for yourself, how you're showing up in work and in those moments of life where you're not in front of the camera? Do you feel like you've noticed a shift there?
Yeah, I've definitely learned to as I grew, I started to do a lot more, calls, podcasts, other things, a lot of engagements. My
Hmm.
initial first 5, 6,000 followers probably, it was very much just me. So it was very
Hmm.
flexible. But as I grew, I had commitments outside
Hmm.
of my work hours. So if somebody would ask me to stay extra, sometimes I would have to say no and be like, "Hey, I have a hard stop today. I am sorry, I can't stay past 4." And
Yeah.
that became a new part of that because in especially in Desi society, most Asian societies, you don't say no to your superiors.
Mm-hmm.
You do what the boss says, you do what your dad says, you do what your grandparents say, you just kind of keep doing what the older person says. And so
Yeah.
that was really new to me, drawing boundaries for myself and creating that work life divide. Or if I know that I'm going to have a late night and I know I need a nap in the middle, I still do have a hard stop and I do have to set that for myself. So all of that was very new to me, kind of creating that work life divide and understanding where that balance comes in. And then
Yeah.
also not getting too overly engrossed in the business side because I do need to have personal time as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Mm. Boundaries are one of the key factors for burnout prevention and recovery. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I know we have a hard stop tonight. Otherwise, we would talk for hours about this. I just love being in your presence. I love being able to witness your journey on social media and just the authenticity that you bring to it. Adia, thank you so much for being with us tonight. For folks who are watching, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is currently my primary channel of communication, the Desi Career Woman. I am working on getting a website set up, so if you follow along, you will be seeing that link along soon.
Wonderful. Well, make sure that you head over to Instagram and you follow Adia. That way, you can also just be blessed with her abundance of joy and personality and wisdom, truly. Folks, we will be back next Thursday with another edition of Engineer Your Energy at noon Central Standard Time on LinkedIn, YouTube, and on Facebook, of course. But before then, next Tuesday night, we have our first of 3 trainings on burnout prevention during winter. With all of the changes that winter brings, how can you equip yourself with a vast toolkit for preventing stress, managing your day to day, ensuring that you feel more energy throughout the season. So make sure that you get a ticket to that. There will be a link in the comment of this video so that you can grab your ticket today. We'll see you there.